To coin a phrase, who the bloody hell are we? What makes an Australian? Back in the convict days, the answer was simple. A criminal record, a British uniform, or a lust for land and adventure. Now, though, it's much more complex. Certainly more complex than mateship, meat pies and a beer at the footy. And just the other day, it became even tougher to be an Australian. You might have missed it, but the government has begun the biggest overhaul of our citizenship laws in 60 years. Later too, there's the prospect of an Aussie values test for migrants to make sure we're all true blue. It's a change that affects every one of us. And as you'll see, a story just made for Charles Wooley.
Australia Day in the year 2007, and in suburban Brunswick, the taste of modern Australia is at once familiar and exotic.
No, we're going to have Australian barbecue cooked Lebanese way.
All right, okay, so this is
One of my sisters.
the blending of the cultures.
Yes.
Okay,
Australian, Lebanese.
right for that.
Like 1/4 of Australians, Zaf Saad was born overseas, a Muslim immigrant from Lebanon. It's been a successful cultural trade. As we have taken to Lebanese tucker, so has he embraced Australia.
I've spent 30 years of my life here. Now, I was born in Lebanon, which is fine. This is my country. I belong here because I love it.
Zaf's father, Abood, the chain-smoking kingpin, as he's known around here, arrived in 1970 with nothing. Back then, a job and hard work was seen as qualification enough to start a new life here. But today, the government wants to test their grasp of Australian values before immigrants can become citizens.
You can't force them to have some sort of test because nobody would pass it.
What did you know when you came here?
I knew nothing. People used to call me names. I never used to know what they mean. But then, as I got older, I was used to, you learn the language because I wanted to learn. But I was a kid anyway, I had to learn. If I didn't learn, I used to get a whack behind the ear from my father.
Hello?
Now, I should declare a personal interest in this story.
I'm not alone.
Oh, look what you brought with you.
I was a migrant myself, and it was in rural Tasmania that my mum Ella and my dad Charlie started their new life.
My dad, the pioneer.
I remember all that, yes.
In 1952, the Woolies emigrated from the gloom of post-war Scotland. Unlike most of today's immigrants, they went bush as pioneers in the hydropower business. It was a big decision, but 50 years later, they have no regrets.
One of the things I admired about the Australians is their optimism. No matter what happened, they thought something better was going to happen.
Nobody shed a tear. That's what used to surprise me. Now they do, but in these days they didn't.
Australians didn't cry.
They didn't cry. They say, well, we've got to begin again.
You spend a lot of time...
Australia has been good to them. Dads never had a day out of work. At 89, they're great-grandparents, and I would say model citizens. But would they pass the government's test?
How would you feel about being tested then?
We wouldn't like it at all.
I don't suppose I would like it, Charles. I would do it, but I don't think I'd like it.
How would you go today? I mean, do you know the batting average of the Don, for instance?
No.
No.
Continuing, Dad, here's a tough one for you. Who was the first Prime Minister of Australia?
Bartlett. Bartlett.
Barton.
Well done! Charles Wooley, you are an Australian citizen. With a little help from
Like my parents, most of us might battle to answer the sort of questions a bureaucrat might ask. In any way, just what are Australian values? I'm turning to our history for help. Remember, our nation's founders arrived in chains, so let's begin in the old Nick.
Freedom. Freedom, Charles. That's what Australia's all about, freedom.
Former bank robber Bernie Matthews has spent 18 years behind bars in some of Australia's most notorious prisons.
Maybe it means more to me because I've been on the inside of the wall and looked at freedom, but That's what Australia's all about.
No one appreciates freedom so much as someone who's looked out on the world through bars.
Yeah, someone who's had it taken away from them, yeah.
Like convicts 200 years before him, Bernie's done his time and emerged a better man because of what he believes is a great Australian virtue, optimism.
No, there was always a light at the end of the tunnel, Charles. You have that light at the end of the tunnel. Once that's extinguished, well, there is no hope. And I guess hope, everything is predicated on hope.
And do you think maybe that's where the Australian notion that in the end things will work out, she'll be right, came from?
I think that notion's, it's inbuilt the same as our convict heritage. It's all part and parcel of Australia, isn't it?
In recent times, though, there's been some doubt over whether she really will be right. Our tolerant and easy ways have come under attack from the likes of Sheikh al-Hilali. And rarely in our peacetime history have we been so divided over what it means to be Australian.
Look, I reckon if they want to live in a country here, in Australia, they should abide by its laws. It's that simple.
And if they don't want to?
If they don't want to, they don't want to be here then. If they don't want to be here, they shouldn't be here. They should go back to where they came from. It's that simple. The fights are done, everything's done.
For those like the Saad family, Australia has long been a haven for people looking for peace and escaping war. Yet foreign war looms so large in the Australian story. Our military exploits have done much to shape our idea of who we are as a nation. Even today, 3,000 of our defence men and women are serving around the world, half of them in Iraq, and like Corporal Rebecca Milne, proud of it.
You're an Australian who feels good about herself, aren't you?
Hell yes. I wouldn't put this uniform on every morning if I didn't feel that.
Corporal Milne has just returned from southern Iraq. 7 long months in the most dangerous place on earth. Her experiences leave her with no doubt about our most important core value.
I think our biggest one is our mateship, our unwavering support that if you've known someone 2 minutes or 2 years, you will go into bat for them, you will watch their back, you will support them.
Who's this important looking chap?
That's my grandfather.
Corporal Milne's enthusiasm for Australia is underlined by a long military heritage, from her great-grandfather's service in World War I to her uncle's tour of Vietnam. She is the 4th generation of a family to join up and the first girl to do so.
And what do you think that these blokes contributed to the Australian character?
I think they're a definition of it. They're the larrikins. There's some of the photos there you can see. Where they were the larrikin character and they were doing their job and they had, absolute mateship.
Are you still allowed to do that in the modern Australian Army?
Definitely. And I think that's what helps us do our job, is if we've got that bit of character, that bit of real person in us, that's what helps us do the job.
Long before diggers ever meant soldiers, the word described adventurers of a different kind.
It's not exactly instant gratification, is it?
Oh, it's not. Imagine doing this for 10 or 12 hours a day.
And today, Cordell Kent is a living embodiment of the great Australian tradition of get rich quick.
Look at that. That's gold, isn't it? What a thumping great piece, too.
Yeah, that's real gold.
The Kent family have struck it rich in modern times and built a golden business thanks to the timeless virtue of hard yakka.
You were on the bones of your ass, to quote yourself. When we got married, we had nothing. We had nothing except our love for each other, and we worked really, really hard.
And you did all this on the back of gold?
Did.
In the 1850s and the roaring days of the old gold rush, the foundations for our modern democracy were laid. At the Eureka Stockade, Cordell's predecessors would fight for the right to find gold, convinced it was a noble cause, and the freedom they won lives on today.
We've got rights. They're important things. And if anything, we're guilty of taking our freedoms and our rights for granted.
And the right to prospect.
Absolutely, absolutely. What better form of freedom is there to go out and dig up money? It's wonderful.
The Eureka Uprising was fought under a rebel flag, the Southern Cross. Today, the Australian flag still with the British Union Jack, has been embraced like never before. This summer, there was an uprising at the mere question of the flag being banned at a pop concert. Patriotism has become a booming Australian value, even if most of us still don't know the words to the national anthem.
Every time I hear the Australian national anthem, I do get goosebumps. Because I love it.
You get goosebumps when you hear the Australian national anthem?
Because I like
Our
it from
land
the heart.
is girt by sea.
Hey, mate, we're surrounded by sea.
Don't you think we need something a little more poetic?
Mate, who worries about poetic expressions or not, mate? We know what we mean, so we understand it. That's all that matters.
Australia is indeed a country girt by sea. 80% of us live on its shores, a far cry from the days when just as many of us lived on the land. Out here, a young bloke, Charlie Prell, founded a fortune from the other gold, the golden fleece. Since the turn of the century, the Prell family have bred prize-winning, ribbon-wearing pieces of art.
Go on, don't go away. My grandfather had 35 men on the payroll.
Those were roaring days.
People were
for
happy.
farms in Australia.
They had no, they lived, they made their own fun.
But fortunes were made too.
Yes, oh, big ones.
So this is drier than you've seen?
Oh, I haven't seen it like this.
But those roaring days are now just a melancholy echo of better times. And with the ongoing drought and the changing climate of world trade, Jeff Prell and his wife Jess have never done it tougher.
I doubt if the rural world, as we know it, or Jeff has known it, or Jeff's grandfather has known it, will ever exist again here.
Grandfather Prell would turn in his grave.
He would, I know. I can feel him turning right now. I know.
But before the sun sets and the Prell family dream, they're still surviving on what they believe are the core values of the bush.
I think self-reliance, initiative, independence.
Self-reliance, the ability to do it yourself, to fix it yourself, to make do.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Back in the big smoke, driving a cab to support his family, Zaf Saad has known hard times too. But for him and his family, this is still the promised land of plenty. Plenty of kids and plenty of dangerously strong black Lebanese coffee.
It's a sad family coffee.
There's nothing better than a country like Australia giving you a chance, a second chance.
Getting the second chance can make you love a place even more, can't
Of course it does.
This year, 100,000 new settlers will come here in search of their second chance. But first, they'll have to pass that test, a test of Australian values that may, in fact, be a contravention of Australian values.
When you're looking at a test like that, Charles, you're looking at somebody from a political standpoint or a policy-making view that isn't necessarily correct. It's their view.
It's a straightener and the regulator asking the questions.
Exactly, exactly.
It does sound a bit like it's the warden rattling the door, doesn't it?
It does, yeah, it does.
After all, we've all been new settlers at some stage, and so far we've mostly passed the only test that was on offer to survive and thrive and to make our own contribution to the Australian character.
Zaf, thank you for introducing me to your considerable family.
No worries, mate.
And for all the coffee. I'm going to go away and think about it.
No worries, mate. Catch you.
Okay, all the best.
Bye.
Bye.
Hello, I'm Tara Brown. Thanks for watching 60 Minutes Australia. Subscribe to our channel now for brand new stories and exclusive clips every week. And don't miss out on our extra minutes, segments and full episodes of 60 Minutes on 9now.com.au and the 9Now app.